Hello there, and welcome to my channel, where we explore the wonders of our world at a pace that won't keep you tossing and turning. I'm so glad you're here tonight, whether you're tucked under warm blankets, curled up on a comfortable couch, or simply settling in for a peaceful moment before sleep finds you. Tonight, we're venturing into one of nature's most quietly extraordinary secrets, hidden beneath every footstep you take through a forest. It's a network more vast and intricate than the internet, more ancient than any human civilization, and more essential to life on Earth than you might ever imagine. We're talking about the fungal highways that connect trees, plants, and entire ecosystems in an underground web of communication and cooperation that scientists are only just beginning to understand. Now, I should give you my usual gentle warning. While this video is designed to help you unwind and drift peacefully towards sleep, there's always the delightful risk that you might find yourself so fascinated by the secret lives of fungi that you're still wide awake at 2 a.m, marveling at the invisible networks beneath your feet. But if that happens, well, at least you'll have learned something absolutely magical about the natural world. Before we begin our journey underground, I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from tonight. Are you drifting off to sleep in a cozy bedroom in Copenhagen? Perhaps you're watching from a quiet evening in Melbourne, or maybe you're settling in for the night somewhere in the American Midwest. Whatever corner of the globe you call home, you're very welcome here in this sleepy corner of science. If you enjoy these gentle explorations of the natural world, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing to The Sleepy Scientist. It helps more curious souls find their way to these peaceful scientific journeys, and it means the world to me to share these wonders with fellow travelers. Oh, and just a gentle reminder that while we'll be exploring some fascinating aspects of fungi and forest ecosystems tonight, this video is purely for educational and relaxation purposes. It's not intended as medical or professional advice about mushrooms, foraging, or forest management. If you're interested in those topics, please consult qualified experts in those fields. So, take a deep breath, let your shoulders drop, and prepare to discover a hidden world that exists right beneath the surface of every forest path you've ever wandered. Tonight, we're going underground to meet some of the most remarkable and quietly industrious organisms on our planet. Picture, if you will, walking through a peaceful forest on a misty morning. Sunlight filters through the canopy above, dappling the forest floor with gentle golden patches. You hear the soft rustle of leaves, perhaps the distant call of a bird, maybe the quiet crunch of fallen branches beneath your feet. The air smells of earth and growing things, that particular scent that makes you breathe just a little deeper. What you're experiencing is what most of us think of as the forest. The trees reaching skyward, the ferns unfurling in shaded corners, the moss carpeting fallen logs, the occasional glimpse of a squirrel or butterfly. It's beautiful, peaceful, and feels complete in itself. But here's the thing that would absolutely astound any forest visitor who could suddenly see the invisible. What you're walking through above ground is really just the tip of an unimaginably vast iceberg. Beneath your feet, stretching through the soil in every direction, lies a network so extensive and complex that it makes the most sophisticated human infrastructure look like a child's drawing. This is the Wood Wide Web, as some scientists playfully call it, though its proper name is the mycorrhizal network. And it's not made of cables or fiber optics, but of something far more ancient and elegant. Fungal threads finer than spider silk, connecting tree to tree, plant to plant, creating a living internet that has been operating for hundreds of millions of years. To understand this hidden world, we need to start with fungi themselves, those quiet and often overlooked organisms that are neither plant nor animal, but something wonderfully in between. Most of us, when we think of fungi at all, picture mushrooms popping up after rain, or perhaps the less pleasant varieties that might appear on forgotten bread or in damp corners. But what we see above ground, those mushrooms and toadstools, are really just the reproductive structures of vast underground organisms like apples on an apple tree. The real body of a fungus lives in the soil, in the form of incredibly fine threads called hyphae. These threads are so delicate that they're essentially invisible to the naked eye, yet so numerous and so extensively branched that a single teaspoon of forest soil might contain several miles of them. Imagine that for a moment. Several miles of living, growing, communicating threads in just one teaspoon of the earth beneath a single tree. These hyphal threads don't grow randomly. They seek, they explore, they connect, they grow toward sources of nutrients, toward the roots of plants, toward other fungal networks, and when they find what they're looking for, they form partnerships so intimate and so mutually beneficial that the organisms involved literally cannot survive without each other. This is where our story becomes truly remarkable. You see, trees and other plants have a fundamental problem. They're rooted in one spot, unable to move when resources become scarce, unable to venture forth to find what they need. Their roots can only reach so far, can only explore a limited volume of soil. But fungi, with their questing thread-like bodies, can spread through the earth like living water, reaching far beyond where any root could ever go. And so, perhaps 400 million years ago, an alliance began. Plant roots and fungal hyphae started growing together, intertwining, sharing resources in a partnership so successful that it quite literally changed the world. Scientists call these partnerships mycorrhizae, from the Greek words for fungus and root. But that clinical term hardly captures the profound intimacy of what's actually happening. The fungal threads wrap around plant roots, sometimes even growing inside the root cells themselves. The fungus extends the plant's reach exponentially, creating a secondary root system that can be hundreds or even thousands of times larger than the plant's actual roots. Through this extended network, the fungus can gather water and nutrients from a vast area of soil and deliver them directly to its plant partner. But what does the plant offer in return? Something the fungus cannot make for itself: sugar. Plants, through photosynthesis, convert sunlight into energy in the form of sugars. And plants are generous partners. They share up to 30% of the sugars they create with their fungal allies. 30%. Imagine if you gave away nearly a third of your income to your business partner. That's how valuable this relationship is to both sides. But here's where the story becomes even more extraordinary. These fungal networks don't just connect one plant to one fungus, they connect forests. A single fungal network can link hundreds of trees and thousands of other plants across vast areas. Through these networks, a Douglas fir on one side of a forest can be directly connected to a birch tree half a mile away. They share nutrients, they share water, they even share information. Yes, information. Trees, it turns out, can communicate through their fungal partners. When a tree is attacked by insects, it can send chemical signals through the network, warning distant trees to begin producing defensive compounds. When a tree is dying, it can transfer its resources to younger trees through the fungal highways. Mother trees, the largest and oldest in a forest, use these networks to nurture their offspring, sending them the nutrients they need to survive in the deep shade of the forest floor. The more scientists study these networks, the more complex and sophisticated they appear to be. Different species of fungi specialize in different services. Some are primarily concerned with gathering phosphorus. Others focus on nitrogen. Some excel at breaking down organic matter. Others at storing carbon. Some fungal species are generalists, connecting with many different types of plants, while others are specialists, forming exclusive partnerships with just one or two plant species. And the networks themselves show properties that seem almost impossibly intelligent for organisms without brains. They route resources efficiently, they maintain redundant pathways in case some connections are damaged, they even appear to show preferences, sending more resources to plants that are better partners and less to those that aren't pulling their weight in the relationship. Recent research has revealed that these networks can be truly enormous in scale. Scientists have mapped individual fungal networks that stretch across thousands of acres connecting entire forests in a single, interconnected web of mutual support. The largest known fungal organism is actually a honey fungus in Oregon that covers over 2,400 acres and is estimated to be between 2,000 and 8,000 years old. This single organism, living mostly underground and invisible to casual observation, covers an area larger than many cities. But perhaps most remarkably, these networks create a kind of forest socialism, a system where resources flow not according to competitive advantage, but according to need. Strong, healthy trees support weak ones. Trees in sunny clearings share their excess sugars with trees struggling in deep shade. Parent trees nurture their offspring through the network, and even trees of different species help each other survive difficult times. This cooperation extends beyond just sharing resources. The networks also serve as early warning systems. When bark beetles attack one tree, chemical alarm signals race through the fungal highways, alerting distant trees to begin producing the bitter compounds that make them less appealing to the insects. When drought threatens, trees can send distress signals through the network, prompting other trees to begin conserving water. Scientists have discovered that trees can even recognize their own offspring through these networks and will preferentially send resources to their own seedlings rather than to unrelated young trees. It's as if the forest has a form of family recognition, a way for parent trees to care for their children even when they're growing far away. The implications of these discoveries are profound, both for how we understand forests and for how we think about life itself. For centuries, we viewed nature through the lens of competition, of survival, of the fittest, of organisms struggling against each other for limited resources. And while competition certainly exists in nature, these fungal networks reveal a parallel world of cooperation, mutual aid, and collective survival strategies that may be just as important, if not more so. These networks challenge our very definitions of where one organism ends and another begins. Is a forest really a collection of individual trees, or is it better understood as a single interconnected superorganism? When nutrients flow freely between distant trees, when information travels instantly across vast networks, when the health of one tree depends intimately on the health of hundreds of others, our usual categories start to break down. And this is just the beginning of our story. The more scientists dig into the secrets of the Wood Wide Web, the more astonishing discoveries they make. There are fungi that can manipulate the behavior of their plant partners, encouraging them to grow in ways that benefit the network. There are networks that appear to have memory, responding differently to threats they've encountered before. There are even suggestions that some fungal networks might engage in a form of trading, exchanging different types of resources based on supply and demand across the forest. As we delve deeper into these underground mysteries, we encounter some of the most fascinating characters in the fungal world. There are fungi that act as matchmakers, introducing tree roots to other fungal partners when relationships aren't working out quite right. There are others that function like banks, storing excess nutrients from abundant times and releasing them during periods of scarcity. Some fungi even appear to charge different rates for their services, demanding more sugar from plants that require more intensive care. The diversity of these fungal partners is truly staggering. In a single forest, you might find hundreds of different species of mycorrhizal fungi, each with their own specialties, their own preferred plant partners, their own unique contributions to the network. Some fungi excel at breaking down tough organic compounds, essentially composting the forest floor and making those nutrients available to plants. Others are masterful miners, extracting minerals from rock and clay that would otherwise remain locked away for geological ages. There's a particular group of fungi called ectomycorrhizal fungi that form beautiful, intricate sheaths around tree roots, looking almost like delicate lacework when viewed under a microscope. These fungi are the partners of choice for many forest giants. The oaks, pines, birches, and beeches that form the backbone of temperate forests around the world. They're so efficient at gathering nutrients that trees partnered with these fungi can often thrive in soils that would be completely inadequate for plants trying to go it alone. Then there are the mycorrhizal fungi, which take intimacy to an entirely different level by actually growing inside the root cells of their plant partners. These fungi form structures that look remarkably like tiny trees inside the root cells, creating an enormous surface area for nutrient exchange. Most grasses, wildflowers, and many crop plants depend on these internal fungal partners, making them absolutely crucial to both natural ecosystems and human agriculture. What's particularly enchanting is how these partnerships form in the first place. Picture a tiny tree seedling, just emerged from its seed, sending out its first delicate roots into the dark soil. Those roots release chemical signals, essentially calling out into the earth, advertising their presence and their willingness to trade. Fungal spores and hyphal threads in the soil detect these chemical messages and begin growing toward the young roots. It's like a very slow, very quiet conversation conducted entirely in chemical whispers. When the right partners find each other, something magical happens. The fungal threads begin to wrap around the root tips, and both organisms start to change. The plant begins producing special transfer cells designed specifically for sharing nutrients with its fungal partner. The fungus develops specialized structures for receiving those nutrients and for delivering water and minerals in return. It's as if both organisms are learning a new language together, developing a vocabulary of chemical exchanges that will sustain them both for years or even decades to come. But these networks aren't just passive highways for resource transport. They're dynamic, responsive systems that can adapt to changing conditions with remarkable sophistication. When a tree is shaded by the growth of taller neighbors, the network can redirect resources to help it survive. When a drought strikes, trees with access to deeper water sources will share that precious resource through the fungal connections. When nutrients become scarce in one area, the network can essentially reroute supply lines to flow from areas of abundance. Scientists have observed networks making what can only be described as decisions. When presented with multiple possible connections, fungi will often choose to link with the most generous plants, those that share the most carbon in exchange for nutrients. Some networks even appear to punish cheaters. Plants that take resources but don't contribute their fair share of sugars find themselves gradually cut off from the network's benefits. The seasonal rhythms of these networks are particularly beautiful to contemplate. In spring, as trees begin to photosynthesize again after winter's dormancy, the networks come alive with flowing sugars. Young leaves, fresh and green, start pumping energy down into the soil, and the fungal highways begin to hum with activity. Resources that were carefully hoarded through the winter months begin to flow again, supporting new growth throughout the forest. In autumn, as trees prepare for winter, the networks become highways for storage. Trees transfer their remaining sugars to fungal partners, which convert them into long-term storage compounds. Some fungi even grow specialized storage structures, creating underground pantries that will sustain the network through the lean months ahead. When spring returns, these stored resources can be mobilized to support the forest's awakening. The resilience of these networks is truly remarkable. When storms, topple trees, or diseases kill large patches of forest, the fungal highways often survive, ready to support new growth. Seedlings colonizing disturbed areas can tap into these existing networks, receiving the resources they need to establish themselves much more quickly than they could alone. It's as if the forest maintains an underground insurance policy, a backup system that helps it recover from disasters. Recent research has revealed that these networks can even bridge different forest types. Scientists have found fungal connections linking deciduous and coniferous forests, creating continent-spanning networks that may help forests adapt to changing climate conditions. As temperatures shift and precipitation patterns change, these networks may provide pathways for genetic material and resources to flow between different forest ecosystems, potentially helping forests migrate and adapt over time. The chemical communications traveling through these networks are incredibly sophisticated. Trees don't just send simple alarm signals. They can convey detailed information about what kind of threat they're facing, how severe the attack is, and what defensive strategies are most likely to work. A tree being attacked by leaf-eating caterpillars sends different signals than one being invaded by bark beetles, and receiving trees can tailor their defensive responses accordingly. Some of the most recent discoveries have revealed that these networks may have memory. Fungi that have previously encountered certain types of threats appear to maintain some record of those experiences, responding more quickly and more effectively when similar threats arise in the future. It's as if the network learns from experience, becoming more skilled at protecting its members over time. The diversity of fungi participating in these networks continues to astound researchers. There are fungi that specialize in connecting with plant roots in extremely acidic soils, others that thrive in alkaline conditions. Some fungi excel in sandy soils, others in heavy clay. There are specialists that work best in cold climates and others adapted to hot, dry conditions. This diversity means that fungal networks can support plant communities across an enormous range of environmental conditions. Perhaps most remarkably, scientists are discovering that these networks may play crucial roles in carbon storage, one of the most important processes for regulating Earth's climate. Fungi store vast amounts of carbon in their tissues and in the soil compounds they produce. Some estimates suggest that fungal networks may store more carbon than all the world's plants combined, making them crucial players in the global carbon cycle. The medical properties of many network-forming fungi add another layer of wonder to these systems. Many of the same fungi that form partnerships with trees also produce compounds that have antibacterial, antiviral, or immune-boosting properties. The forest's underground pharmacy may be far more extensive and sophisticated than we ever imagined, with fungi producing a vast array of bioactive compounds that help protect both themselves and their plant partners from diseases and pests. As we contemplate these hidden networks spread beneath every forest floor, we begin to understand that we're looking at one of life's greatest collaborations, a partnership so successful that it has shaped the evolution of both plants and fungi for hundreds of millions of years. These networks represent a different way of thinking about survival and success, not through competition and domination, but through cooperation, sharing, and mutual support. The implications extend far beyond the forest. Agricultural researchers are studying these natural partnerships to develop more sustainable farming practices, learning how to harness fungal networks to reduce the need for fertilizers and pesticides. Urban planners are considering how to preserve and restore fungal networks in city environments, recognizing their importance for tree health and urban ecosystem stability. As you settle deeper into your evening rest, perhaps you'll find comfort in knowing that beneath the surface of our world, these ancient networks continue their quiet work, connecting, communicating, and caring for the living world in ways both profound and beautiful. They remind us that cooperation and mutual aid are not human inventions, but fundamental principles woven into the very fabric of life on Earth. These networks also reveal something profound about the nature of intelligence itself. We tend to think of intelligence as something that requires a brain, a centralized processing unit that makes decisions and coordinates responses. But what we see in fungal networks challenges this assumption entirely. Here we have systems that display learning, memory, decision-making, and complex problem-solving, all without anything resembling a nervous system. The fungi achieve this through what scientists call distributed intelligence. Instead of having a single control center, the network processes information collectively, with countless hyphal threads sensing their environment, sharing chemical signals, and coordinating responses across vast distances. It's rather like how a flock of birds can perform intricate aerial maneuvers without any single bird directing the entire group, except that fungal networks operate on a scale that spans entire continents and persists for thousands of years. This distributed intelligence allows fungal networks to solve remarkably complex logistical problems. They optimize resource distribution across irregular terrain, maintain multiple redundant pathways to prevent system failures, and even engage in what appears to be sophisticated economic behavior, adjusting the flow of resources based on supply and demand throughout the network. Some researchers have compared these networks to the internet, noting similarities in how both systems route information and maintain connectivity even when individual connections fail. But perhaps even more fascinating is how these networks handle what we might call social problems. When resources are scarce, how does the network decide which plants receive priority? When new seedlings attempt to join the network, how are they evaluated and integrated? When established members of the network begin to fail, how does the system reallocate their resources most efficiently? Scientists have observed that fungal networks appear to maintain a kind of reputation system. Plants that consistently contribute their fair share of carbon sugars receive preferential treatment when they're in need. Those that attempt to take more than they give may find themselves gradually isolated from the network's benefits. It's a system that rewards cooperation and discourages freeloading, maintaining the overall health and stability of the forest community. The seasonal dynamics of these networks reveal another layer of their sophisticated organization. As autumn approaches and deciduous trees begin to shut down their photosynthesis, the network must rapidly reorganize to maintain critical connections. Evergreen trees that continue producing sugars through winter become crucial resource providers, supporting not only the dormant deciduous trees, but also the vast fungal infrastructure that keeps the entire system operational. During these transitions, the network displays what can only be described as forward planning. Before the first frost, resources begin flowing from deciduous trees to storage sites throughout the network. Fungi develop specialized storage structures, creating underground reserves that will sustain the community through the long winter months. Some of these storage sites can maintain viable resources for years, providing insurance against particularly harsh winters or extended droughts. The spring awakening of these networks is equally remarkable. As temperatures rise and daylight hours increase, the stored resources begin to flow again, but not randomly. The network appears to prioritize the most promising young trees, those in locations with good light and soil conditions, essentially making investment decisions about where to allocate limited resources for maximum future returns. This forward-thinking behavior extends to the network's response to environmental threats. When climate conditions begin to shift, the network doesn't simply react to current problems, but begins preparing for future challenges. Trees in areas becoming too dry receive extra water reserves, while those in newly favorable locations get increased nutrients to help them expand their populations. Recent research has revealed that these networks may be actively involved in forest migration, helping tree species adapt to changing climate conditions over time. As temperature and precipitation patterns shift, fungal networks can extend their reach into new areas, essentially building the infrastructure needed for forest expansion before the trees themselves can establish there. It's as if the network scouts ahead, preparing the way for forest communities to move into newly suitable habitats. The chemical complexity of these underground communications continues to astound researchers. Scientists have identified hundreds of different signaling compounds that travel through fungal networks, each carrying specific information about conditions, threats, or opportunities. Some chemicals signal the presence of particular nutrients, others indicate pest attacks or disease outbreaks. There are compounds that coordinate seasonal changes, and others that facilitate the formation of new partnerships between previously unconnected organisms. What's particularly elegant about this chemical communication system is its efficiency. Unlike our electronic communications, which require constant energy input to maintain signals, the fungal network's chemical messages are self-propagating. Once released, signaling compounds can travel through the network without requiring additional energy from the sender, allowing information to spread rapidly across vast distances with minimal metabolic cost. The network also demonstrates remarkable redundancy in its communication pathways. Critical information travels through multiple routes simultaneously, ensuring that important messages reach their destinations even if some connections are damaged. This redundancy is particularly important during storms or other disturbances that might physically disrupt parts of the network. Scientists studying these networks have been surprised by their apparent ability to learn and adapt. Networks that have experienced particular types of stress or attack respond more quickly and more effectively when similar challenges arise in the future. The network seems to develop institutional memory, preserving information about successful response strategies and making that knowledge available throughout the community. This learning extends to the network's ability to recognize and respond to new partners. When young trees attempt to join an established network, the fungi appear to evaluate these potential new members carefully, assessing their health, their location, and their likely contribution to the community before fully integrating them into the resource-sharing system. It's a careful vetting process that helps maintain the overall stability and productivity of the network. The architectural complexity of these networks rivals anything human engineers have designed. Fungal highways branch and merge, creating multiple pathways between any 2 points in the forest. Major trunk lines carry the bulk of resource flow, while smaller branch connections provide local service to individual trees and plants. The entire system shows principles of redundancy and load balancing that would be familiar to any network engineer. But unlike human-designed networks, these fungal systems are entirely self-organizing and self-maintaining. No central authority plans their expansion or coordinates their operations. Instead, the network emerges from countless local interactions between individual hyphal threads, each responding to chemical gradients and resource availability in their immediate vicinity. The result is a system that shows emergent properties far more sophisticated than any of its individual components. The economic behavior of these networks provides insights into cooperation and resource sharing that economists find fascinating. The network operates what appears to be a complex barter economy, with different species of fungi offering different services in exchange for carbon from their plant partners. Some fungi specialize in phosphorus extraction, others in nitrogen gathering, while still others focus on water collection or mineral processing. Within this economy, exchange rates fluctuate based on supply and demand. When phosphorus is scarce, fungi that specialize in phosphorus gathering can command higher prices in carbon payments. During droughts, water-gathering specialists become more valuable. The network continuously adjusts these exchange rates, ensuring that resources flow to where they're most needed, while maintaining incentives for fungi to provide their specialized services. Competition exists within this cooperative framework, but it takes unusual forms. Fungi compete to be the best partners, offering superior service to attract and retain the most productive plant clients. Plants, in turn, may maintain relationships with multiple fungal partners, diversifying their resource supply and creating competitive pressure that keeps their fungal partners performing at high levels. The network also displays sophisticated risk management strategies. Resources are distributed across multiple pathways and storage sites, reducing the impact of any single point of failure. When parts of the network are damaged by storms, disease, or human activity, alternative routes quickly develop to maintain critical connections. This resilience has allowed fungal networks to persist through countless environmental changes over hundreds of millions of years. Some of the most recent discoveries about these networks involve their role in plant genetics and evolution. The network appears to facilitate the exchange of genetic material between plants, allowing beneficial adaptations to spread more rapidly through plant populations. This genetic mixing may help forest communities adapt more quickly to changing environmental conditions than they could through traditional reproduction alone. The network may also influence plant behavior in more direct ways. Some fungi produce compounds that can alter plant growth patterns, encouraging their partners to develop root systems that are more beneficial to the network as a whole. Other fungi appear to influence plant reproductive strategies, potentially coordinating flowering and seed production across the forest to optimize the timing of new seedling establishment. As we contemplate these remarkable underground civilizations, we begin to understand that the forest floor conceals one of Earth's most sophisticated biological technologies. These networks represent hundreds of millions of years of evolutionary refinement, resulting in systems that display properties we associate with intelligence, planning, and social organization, all emerging from the interactions of organisms that lack anything resembling a brain or nervous system. The implications for our understanding of life itself are profound. These networks suggest that intelligence and cooperation may be far more fundamental to life than we previously recognized. They show us that complex, organized behavior can emerge from simple interactions between individual organisms, creating systems that are far more sophisticated than the sum of their parts. For those of us living above ground, often feeling isolated and disconnected in our modern world, there's something deeply comforting about knowing that beneath our feet lies this ancient network of cooperation and mutual aid. The forest's quiet example reminds us that collaboration and care for community members isn't just a nice ideal, but a successful strategy that has sustained entire ecosystems for longer than our species has existed. As you continue to settle into the peaceful quiet of your evening, perhaps you'll find yourself thinking about the hidden networks that surround us all, the invisible connections that link living things in webs of mutual support and care. The next time you walk through a forest, you'll know that you're not just walking among trees, but above one of life's greatest collaborations, a living internet that has been quietly operating beneath our feet, connecting and nurturing the world above in ways both profound and beautiful. The quiet sophistication of these networks extends into realms that challenge our most basic assumptions about how life organizes itself. When scientists first began mapping these fungal highways using radioactive tracers, they expected to find simple, direct connections between nearby plants. What they discovered instead was something that resembled the most complex transportation networks humans have ever built, complete with express routes, local connections, and what can only be described as fungal traffic management. Picture, if you will, a busy intersection in this underground world. Multiple hyphal highways converge at a single point, with resources flowing in different directions based on need and availability throughout the network. But unlike our surface world traffic, there are no accidents, no gridlock, no confusion about right-of-way. The fungal threads somehow coordinate their activities with an efficiency that would make any city planner weep with envy. This coordination becomes even more remarkable when you consider that these networks operate across scales that boggle the imagination. A single fungal thread might be connected to pathways that stretch for miles, yet it can respond to local conditions with incredible precision. When a nearby tree root needs phosphorus, the network can redirect resources from distant sources within hours, all without any central command structure issuing orders or coordinating the response. The chemistry of these interactions reveals layers of complexity that scientists are only beginning to unravel. Different species of fungi don't just form random partnerships with whatever plants happen to be nearby. Instead, they engage in something remarkably similar to chemical courtship, with elaborate exchanges of signaling molecules that determine compatibility and establish the terms of their partnership. Some of these chemical conversations are surprisingly specific. A particular species of oak tree, for instance, might release a unique cocktail of compounds that attracts only certain types of fungi, while those same fungi might respond with their own specialized chemical signatures that confirm their identity and advertise their particular skills. It's as if each species has its own chemical business card, advertising its services and seeking compatible partners. Once partnerships are established, the chemical dialogue becomes even more sophisticated. Plants don't just dump sugar into the network and hope for the best. Instead, they carefully regulate their contributions, increasing their payments when they receive good service, and reducing them when their fungal partners aren't meeting expectations. The fungi, in turn, can adjust the quality and quantity of their services, essentially negotiating the terms of their contracts through chemical exchanges. This negotiation process reveals something that scientists find both fascinating and slightly unsettling about fungal intelligence. The networks appear to engage in what can only be described as economic planning. They seem to anticipate future needs, stockpiling resources in some areas while reducing investments in others. During good years, when resources are abundant, the networks build up reserves and expand their infrastructure. During challenging periods, they become more conservative, focusing resources on maintaining critical connections. The networks also display what appears to be market behavior, with different regions of the forest commanding different prices for the same resources based on local supply and demand. A tree growing in phosphorus-poor soil might find itself paying premium rates for that essential nutrient, while a tree in phosphorus-rich conditions might receive the same service for a fraction of the cost. Yet, somehow, the network maintains overall fairness, ensuring that no plant is completely priced out of essential services. Recent research has uncovered evidence that these networks might engage in something resembling insurance systems. Healthy trees in good growing conditions appear to contribute more resources than they immediately need, building up credits that they can draw upon during times of stress. Trees that have paid into this system receive extra support during droughts, attacks by pests, or other challenges. It's a form of community insurance that spreads risk across the entire network. But perhaps most remarkably, the networks seem to understand something about long-term investment that many human institutions struggle with. They consistently allocate disproportionate resources to young, promising trees, even when those trees are not yet contributing much to the network. It's as if the fungi recognize that investing in the next generation will pay dividends decades into the future, when those young trees become the network's primary resource providers. This investment strategy extends to the network's approach to diversity. Rather than simply connecting with the most immediately profitable partners, fungal networks actively maintain relationships with a wide variety of plant species, even when some of those relationships are less immediately rewarding. This diversity provides resilience, ensuring that the network can continue functioning even when particular species are affected by disease, climate stress, or other challenges. The seasonal rhythms of these networks reveal yet another layer of their sophisticated organization. As winter approaches, the networks don't simply shut down and wait for spring. Instead, they undergo a complex reorganization, shifting from growth mode to maintenance mode. Resources that were flowing toward expanding the network during the growing season are redirected towards strengthening existing connections and building up storage reserves. This seasonal transition involves what appears to be network-wide communication, with chemical signals coordinating the shutdown of non-essential pathways and the reinforcement of critical connections. Trees that will remain active through winter, primarily evergreens, take on increased responsibilities as the primary resource providers for the dormant network. The fungi adjust their service priorities accordingly, ensuring that these winter-active trees receive whatever support they need to sustain the entire community through the cold months. The spring reactivation of these networks is equally choreographed. As soil temperatures rise and daylight hours increase, stored resources begin to flow again, but not randomly. The network appears to have maintained detailed information about which trees showed the most promise the previous year, and these high performers receive priority access to the stored resources. It's as if the network keeps performance reviews on its members, using this information to make investment decisions about where to allocate limited spring resources for maximum community benefit. The networks also display remarkable adaptability to human interference. When roads are built through forests, severing fungal connections, the networks quickly develop alternative pathways around the obstruction. When forests are partially cleared, the remaining networks reorganize to support the surviving trees more intensively. Even in urban environments, where soil conditions are often poor and tree populations are fragmented, fungal networks manage to establish connections that help city trees survive conditions that would otherwise be impossible for them to tolerate. This adaptability has led some researchers to study fungal networks as models for resilient infrastructure design. The principles that allow these networks to maintain functionality despite constant disruption might inform the design of communication systems, transportation networks, or economic systems that need to continue operating despite various forms of interference or attack. The network's approach to information processing offers insights that computer scientists find particularly intriguing. Unlike digital networks, which process information in discrete bits, fungal networks appear to use analog processing, with chemical concentrations carrying information rather than simple on-off signals. This allows them to convey much more nuanced information in each transmission, but it also requires more sophisticated interpretation by the receiving organisms. The speed of information transmission through these networks varies depending on the urgency and importance of the message. Alarm signals about immediate threats can travel through the network in a matter of minutes, while less urgent information about resource availability might take hours or days to propagate fully. The network seems to have developed a priority system that ensures critical information gets through quickly while preventing less important signals from clogging the communication pathways. One of the most intriguing aspects of these communication systems is their apparent ability to distinguish between different sources of information. When multiple trees in an area are sending signals, the network can somehow sort these messages, determining which are most reliable and which should be given priority. Trees with proven track records of accurate reporting seem to have their signals amplified and spread more widely, while signals from less reliable sources may be filtered out or given lower priority. The networks also demonstrate sophisticated error correction mechanisms. When conflicting information arises from different sources, the network appears to cross-reference these signals, seeking additional confirmation before acting on potentially incorrect information. This prevents false alarms from triggering unnecessary defensive responses throughout the forest, conserving resources for genuine threats. Recent discoveries have revealed that these networks may maintain what can only be described as libraries of information about past events. Fungi that have experienced particular types of stress appear to store chemical memories of those experiences, allowing them to respond more quickly and more effectively when similar situations arise in the future. These memories can persist for years, creating an institutional knowledge base that benefits the entire network. The sharing of this historical information appears to be one of the network's most valuable services. Young trees connecting to an established network gain access not just to resources, but to the accumulated wisdom of decades or even centuries of forest experience. They learn how to recognize and respond to various threats, how to optimize their resource allocation during different seasons, and how to contribute most effectively to the community's overall health. This knowledge transfer system helps explain how forests can recover so quickly from major disturbances. When new trees colonize a disturbed area, they're not starting from scratch. Instead, they're plugging into networks that already contain detailed information about local growing conditions, typical weather patterns, common threats, and successful survival strategies. It's as if each new tree receives a comprehensive orientation package when it joins the network. The networks also appear to engage in something resembling research and development, constantly experimenting with new connections and partnerships. When environmental conditions begin to change, the networks will often establish tentative connections with plant species that weren't previously part of the community, testing whether these new relationships might be beneficial under the changing conditions. This experimental approach allows the networks to adapt gradually to environmental changes, rather than waiting until existing partnerships fail. As climate patterns shift, for example, networks can begin incorporating tree species that are better adapted to the new conditions, gradually shifting the composition of the forest community in response to changing environmental pressures. The role of these networks in forest succession reveals another dimension of their long-term planning capabilities. As forests mature and change over time, the fungal networks help orchestrate these transitions, supporting the establishment of new tree species, while gradually reducing support for species that are becoming less well adapted to the changing forest conditions. This process can take decades or even centuries, but the networks appear to maintain consistent strategies throughout these long transitions, suggesting a form of institutional memory that transcends the lifespan of any individual organism. The network remembers the forest's history and uses that information to guide its future development, ensuring that each stage of succession is as smooth and successful as possible. The implications of these discoveries extend far beyond forestry and ecology. They suggest that cooperation and mutual aid may be far more fundamental to life than we previously understood. These networks show us that complex, intelligent behavior can emerge from the interactions of simple organisms, creating systems that are far more sophisticated and resilient than anything any individual member could achieve alone. For those of us going about our daily lives above ground, often feeling disconnected from nature and from each other, there's something profoundly hopeful about these underground networks. They remind us that beneath the surface of our world, ancient systems of cooperation and care continue to operate, connecting living things in webs of mutual support that have sustained life through countless challenges over hundreds of millions of years. As you settle deeper into your evening rest, perhaps you'll find comfort in knowing that this great work of connection and care continues even now, in the darkness beneath every forest, every park, every tree-lined street. The quiet hum of chemical conversations, the gentle flow of shared resources, the patient work of building and maintaining relationships that will outlast any individual life. All of this continues in the hidden world beneath our feet, a reminder that cooperation and community are not human inventions, but fundamental principles woven into the very fabric of life on Earth. These networks also reveal something profound about the nature of time itself, at least from a biological perspective. While we humans experience time as a linear progression of moments, the fungal networks seem to operate on multiple timescales simultaneously. They respond to immediate needs within minutes, adjust to seasonal changes over months, adapt to climate shifts over years, and maintain evolutionary strategies over centuries. This multi-temporal awareness allows them to balance short-term responsiveness with long-term stability in ways that human institutions often struggle to achieve. The network can redirect resources quickly to address immediate crises while maintaining the long-term investments needed to ensure the forest's survival through future challenges. It's a form of temporal wisdom that emerges from the collective experience of countless organisms working together across vast spans of time. The network's relationship with time becomes even more fascinating when we consider how they handle what we might call temporal arbitrage, taking advantage of timing differences across the forest. A tree that leaves out early in spring might have access to abundant sunlight before its neighbors wake up, but it also faces greater risk from late frosts. The network helps balance these trade-offs, allowing early risers to share their temporary advantages while providing them with extra protection against seasonal hazards. This temporal coordination extends to reproduction as well. Many trees in a forest will synchronize their flowering or seed production, creating what botanists call mast years, seasons when the entire forest produces seeds simultaneously. The fungal networks appear to play a crucial role in coordinating these events, sharing chemical signals that help trees across vast areas time their reproductive efforts together. This synchronization overwhelms seed predators and ensures that at least some seeds will survive to establish the next generation. But perhaps most remarkably, these networks seem to maintain what can only be described as cultural traditions, patterns of behavior that persist long after the organisms that established them have died. Certain pathways through the network become preferred routes for resource transport, even when more direct alternatives are available. Specific partnerships between fungal species and tree families continue for generations, passed down not through genetics but through the network's collective memory. These traditions provide stability in an ever-changing world. New members joining the network don't have to reinvent successful strategies. They inherit the accumulated wisdom of countless previous generations. Young trees learn where to send their roots, which fungal partners are most reliable, and how to time their growth cycles for maximum success. It's a form of cultural inheritance that operates entirely through chemical communication. The network's ability to maintain these traditions while still adapting to new circumstances reveals a sophisticated balance between conservation and innovation. Core principles, like the importance of sharing resources and maintaining diverse partnerships, remain constant, while specific practices evolve in response to changing conditions. It's as if the network has developed a constitution of sorts, a set of fundamental values that guide its operations while allowing for flexibility in implementation. Recent research has uncovered evidence that these networks may engage in something resembling education, with experienced fungi actively teaching younger members of the network how to perform their essential functions. When new fungal spores germinate in the soil, they don't immediately know how to form effective partnerships with plant roots, or how to navigate the complex social dynamics of an established network. Older, more experienced fungi appear to guide these newcomers, sharing chemical signals that demonstrate proper techniques for root colonization, resource extraction, and network integration. It's a patient mentoring process that can take months or even years, during which the established network essentially subsidizes the education of its newest members, investing in their development, even though they won't become fully productive partners for some time. This educational system helps explain how fungal networks maintain their sophisticated behaviors across generations. Unlike animals, which can pass complex behaviors to their offspring through direct teaching, fungi reproduce through spores that contain no behavioral information. The network itself becomes the repository of behavioral knowledge, teaching each new generation how to participate in the ancient collaboration. The networks also display what appears to be conflict resolution mechanisms. When disputes arise, perhaps over resource allocation or territorial boundaries between different fungal species, the network has ways of mediating these conflicts that prevent them from disrupting the overall system. Chemical mediators, often produced by neutral third parties in the network, help negotiating parties reach agreements that allow cooperation to continue. These mediation processes reveal a sophisticated understanding of game theory principles. The network seems to recognize that the long-term benefits of cooperation far outweigh any short-term advantages that might be gained through competitive behavior. Even when individual members could potentially benefit by cheating or hoarding resources, the network's mediation systems create incentives for continued cooperation. The role of these networks in maintaining soil health adds another dimension to their importance. The fungal threads help bind soil particles together, creating stable aggregates that resist erosion and improve water retention. They also contribute to the soil's organic matter content, as fungal tissues decompose more slowly than other organic materials, creating long-term carbon storage in forest soils. This soil-building function means that the networks are literally creating the foundation for future forest growth. Each generation of fungi adds to the soil's structure and fertility, leaving behind a legacy that will support countless future generations of plants and fungi. It's a form of environmental inheritance that operates on geological timescales, with each network contributing to processes that will influence forest development for centuries to come. The network's approach to waste management is equally impressive. Nothing goes unused in these underground systems. Dead plant material, fallen leaves, and even the bodies of deceased network members are efficiently broken down and recycled. Different fungal species specialize in decomposing different types of organic matter, creating a comprehensive recycling system that captures and redistributes every available nutrient. This recycling extends to the network's own infrastructure. When certain pathways become unnecessary or inefficient, the fungi don't simply abandon them. Instead, they carefully dismantle these connections, recovering the valuable resources invested in their construction and redirecting them toward more productive uses. It's a form of planned obsolescence that ensures resources aren't wasted on maintaining unnecessary infrastructure. The networks also demonstrate remarkable water management capabilities. During dry periods, fungi can redirect water from deep soil layers to shallow-rooted plants that would otherwise suffer from drought stress. They can also store water in their own tissues, creating underground reservoirs that help buffer the effects of irregular precipitation. Some fungi even appear to modify the soil's physical properties to improve water retention. They secrete compounds that help soil particles bind together more effectively, creating tiny spaces that can hold water while still allowing air circulation. This soil conditioning service benefits the entire plant community and helps forests survive increasingly variable weather patterns. The chemical complexity of these systems continues to reveal new layers of sophistication. Scientists have identified compounds that appear to serve as fungal currencies, molecules that can be traded between different species as a form of interspecies payment. These chemical currencies allow for complex economic relationships between fungi that don't form direct partnerships but still provide services to each other through the network. Other compounds function as identification markers, allowing fungi to recognize members of their own species, allied species, and potential competitors. The network maintains a complex social registry, with each member's chemical signature providing information about their identity, their capabilities, and their current status within the community. The network's information processing capabilities extend to prediction and forecasting. By monitoring subtle changes in chemical signals from throughout the forest, the network can often anticipate environmental changes before they become obvious to surface observers. Trees may begin preparing for drought conditions days or even weeks before the first signs of water stress become visible, guided by early warning signals from the fungal network. This predictive capability appears to improve with experience. Networks in older, more stable forests show greater accuracy in their environmental forecasting than those in younger or more disturbed areas. The accumulated experience of generations of fungi creates a sophisticated understanding of local environmental patterns that allows the network to prepare its members for likely future challenges. The network's role in plant immunity reveals another fascinating aspect of their function. Many fungi produce compounds that help protect their plant partners from diseases and pests. These protective chemicals are shared through the network, creating a community-wide immune system that benefits all members. When one tree successfully fights off a pathogen, the chemical weapons it used can be distributed to other trees, helping them prepare for similar attacks. This shared immunity system is particularly important for young trees, which often lack the chemical defenses of mature plants. By connecting to established networks, seedlings gain access to a pharmaceutical library developed over decades of forest experience. It's as if each young tree receives a comprehensive vaccination program when it joins the network, protecting it from threats it has never encountered. The networks also appear to engage in quality control, monitoring the health and performance of their members and adjusting their support accordingly. Trees that are declining due to age or disease may receive reduced resources, while those showing signs of recovery get extra support. This isn't callous abandonment, but rather efficient resource allocation. The network focuses its limited resources where they can do the most good. However, the networks also show what can only be described as compassion. Trees that are struggling due to circumstances beyond their control, perhaps shaded by a recent landslide or damaged by storms, often receive sustained support from the network even when their prospects for recovery are uncertain. The community seems willing to invest in its members' welfare even when the return on that investment is unclear. This balance between efficiency and compassion reveals a sophisticated ethical framework operating within these networks. They appear to distinguish between members who are failing due to poor performance and those who are suffering due to external circumstances, responding differently to each situation. It suggests that even without consciousness as we understand it, these networks have evolved something resembling moral reasoning. The seasonal migrations of nutrients through these networks create patterns that are visible from space when viewed through the right instruments. Satellite imagery can sometimes detect the subtle changes in plant health and growth that reflect the underground flow of resources. These patterns reveal the true scale of these networks. They're not just local phenomena, but continental-level systems that influence ecosystem dynamics across entire bioregions. The network's response to climate change is becoming an increasingly important area of research. As temperature and precipitation patterns shift, the networks are helping forests adapt by facilitating the movement of genetic material between populations and by supporting the establishment of new species in areas where they weren't previously found. They're essentially acting as ecological corridors, helping life move and adapt in response to changing conditions. Some networks appear to be actively preparing for future climate conditions by establishing connections with plant species that are better adapted to expected future conditions. It's as if the networks are hedging their bets, maintaining relationships with species that may become more important as the climate continues to change. The network's influence on evolution itself is only beginning to be understood. By facilitating genetic exchange between plant populations and by creating selection pressures for cooperation rather than competition, these networks may be actively shaping the evolutionary trajectory of their member species. Trees that are better at forming fungal partnerships and contributing to network health may have evolutionary advantages over those that rely solely on competitive strategies. This evolutionary influence operates on multiple levels. Individual trees that form better fungal partnerships have access to more resources and better survival prospects. Fungal species that provide superior services attract more plant partners and have more opportunities to reproduce. The network as a whole selects for cooperation, mutualism, and community-oriented behavior among all its members. The implications of this cooperative evolution extend far beyond the forest. These networks demonstrate that evolution doesn't always favor the most aggressive or competitive organisms. Instead, it can favor those that are best at building relationships, sharing resources, and contributing to community welfare. It's a perspective on evolution that emphasizes collaboration over competition, interdependence over independence. As we contemplate these remarkable systems operating beneath our feet, we begin to understand that we're looking at one of life's greatest experiments in cooperation and collective intelligence. These networks represent hundreds of millions of years of evolutionary refinement, resulting in systems that display properties we typically associate with advanced civilizations: communication, trade, education, conflict resolution, resource management, and long-term planning. Yet all of this emerges from the interactions of organisms that lack brains, nervous systems, or any centralized control structure. It's intelligence without consciousness, wisdom without awareness, society without individuals. These networks challenge our most basic assumptions about what intelligence looks like and how complex systems organize themselves. For those of us living in an increasingly connected yet often isolated human world, these fungal networks offer both inspiration and instruction. They show us that meaningful connection doesn't require constant communication, that effective cooperation can emerge without central authority, and that the most resilient systems are often those built on principles of mutual support and shared benefit. The quiet persistence of these networks through countless environmental changes, mass extinctions, and geological upheavals reminds us that cooperation and care are not luxuries that emerge only when conditions are favorable. Instead, they appear to be fundamental strategies that help life persist through the most challenging circumstances. In times of stress, these networks don't fragment or compete more intensely, they cooperate more deeply, share more generously, and support each other more consistently. As you continue to settle into the peaceful quiet of your evening, perhaps you'll find yourself thinking about the hidden connections that surround us all. Not just the fungal networks beneath every forest floor, but all the invisible threads that link living things in webs of mutual dependence and care. The next time you walk among trees, you'll know that you're walking above one of Earth's most ancient and successful civilizations, a quiet society that has been practicing the arts of cooperation and community care for far longer than our species has existed. In the gentle darkness beneath every forest, these networks continue their patient work, connecting, communicating, sharing, and caring for the living world in ways both profound and beautiful. They remind us that beneath the surface of our often chaotic and competitive world, there are deeper currents of cooperation and mutual aid that have sustained life through every challenge our planet has faced. And in that knowledge, perhaps we can find both wonder and comfort as we drift towards sleep, knowing that we are part of a world where caring and connection are not just human ideals, but fundamental principles written into the very foundations of life itself. The beauty of these fungal networks becomes even more apparent when we consider their role as nature's most patient architects. Unlike human construction projects that must be completed within budgets and deadlines, these underground systems build themselves across centuries, with each generation adding new connections, strengthening existing pathways, and gradually expanding the network's reach. Picture a single fungal spore, microscopic and seemingly insignificant, landing in a patch of forest soil. This tiny particle contains the blueprint for what might eventually become part of a network spanning hundreds of acres. But unlike a seed, which carries enough energy to begin growing immediately, this spore must first negotiate its entry into an existing community. It sends out chemical signals, essentially knocking on doors throughout the soil, seeking established network members willing to share resources and knowledge. The process of integration can take months or even years. Established fungi don't simply welcome newcomers with open arms. Instead, they evaluate potential new members carefully, testing their reliability, their ability to contribute useful services, and their compatibility with the network's existing chemistry. It's a gradual courtship that ensures only beneficial partnerships are formed, protecting the network's integrity while allowing for controlled growth and innovation. Once accepted, the new fungal member begins the slow work of establishing its place in the community. It starts small, forming tentative connections with nearby plant roots, learning the local chemical dialects, and gradually building the trust necessary for full participation in resource sharing. The established network provides mentorship during this process, with experienced fungi essentially teaching the newcomer how to perform its role effectively. This mentorship system reveals something remarkable about how these networks maintain their sophisticated behaviors across generations. The knowledge of how to form effective partnerships, how to navigate complex negotiations, and how to contribute to the community's welfare isn't encoded in fungal genes. Instead, it's passed down through direct chemical instruction, with each new generation learning the accumulated wisdom of countless predecessors. The patience required for this educational process is extraordinary by human standards. Experienced fungi may spend years nurturing a single newcomer, providing resources and guidance without receiving much in return. It's an investment in the future, based on the understanding that today's student will become tomorrow's teacher, passing the network's knowledge on to yet another generation. As these young fungi mature and establish themselves, they begin to contribute their own innovations to the network. Each new member brings slightly different capabilities, perhaps adapted to specific soil conditions or specialized for particular types of partnerships. This constant influx of new abilities keeps the network dynamic and adaptable, ensuring it can respond to changing environmental conditions. The process of network expansion reveals another layer of fungal sophistication. As the network grows, it doesn't simply spread randomly in all directions. Instead, it appears to engage in something resembling urban planning, carefully considering where new connections will be most beneficial and how they will integrate with existing infrastructure. Expansion often follows natural corridors, stream valleys, ridgelines, or areas with favorable soil conditions. But the network also actively creates its own corridors when natural ones aren't available. Fungi will sometimes invest enormous resources in building connections across seemingly unsuitable terrain, creating bridges that link distant forest patches or connect different types of ecosystems. These bridge-building projects can take decades to complete and may require the coordinated efforts of multiple fungal species. Some fungi specialize in breaking down rocky barriers, others excel at crossing wet or acidic soils, and still others can establish connections through areas with poor nutrient availability. The network coordinates these diverse capabilities, creating construction crews perfectly adapted to specific challenges. The engineering involved in these projects rivals anything human architects have accomplished. Fungal highways must be designed to handle varying loads as resource demands change seasonally. They must be robust enough to withstand physical disturbance from root growth, soil movement, and animal activity. They must also be efficient, minimizing the energy costs of transporting resources across long distances. To achieve these goals, the networks employ sophisticated architectural principles. Major trunk lines are built with redundant pathways, ensuring that critical connections remain functional even if some routes are damaged. Local distribution networks branch out from these main highways, providing service to individual trees while minimizing the total length of connections needed. The entire system shows principles of load balancing and traffic management that would be familiar to any transportation engineer. But perhaps most remarkably, these networks can actually reorganize their architecture in response to changing needs. When a major tree falls, blocking an important pathway, the network quickly develops alternative routes. When new trees establish themselves in previously unoccupied areas, connections are extended to serve these new community members. The network treats its own infrastructure as dynamic and adaptable, constantly optimizing its design for maximum efficiency. This adaptability extends to the network's response to seasonal changes. During winter, when many plants are dormant and resource demands are lower, the network scales back its operations, closing non-essential pathways and concentrating activity along critical routes. As spring returns and resource demands increase, dormant pathways are reactivated and new temporary connections are established to handle peak loads. The seasonal reorganization involves complex logistical planning. Resources must be repositioned in anticipation of changing demand patterns. Maintenance work on infrastructure is scheduled for periods when disruption will cause minimal inconvenience. Emergency response capabilities are adjusted based on seasonal risks: storms in winter, droughts in summer, fire danger during dry periods. Recent research has revealed that these networks maintain detailed maps of their own structure, somehow keeping track of the thousands of connections that make up even a modest forest network. When resources need to be routed from one area to another, the network can calculate optimal pathways, taking into account current traffic levels, connection capacities, and potential bottlenecks. It's a form of distributed computing that operates entirely through chemical processes. The mapping system appears to include information about connection quality and reliability. Some pathways are marked as high-priority routes, suitable for critical communications and essential resource flows. Others are designated as backup connections, maintained but used only when primary routes are unavailable. The network even appears to maintain information about historical performance, routing important traffic away from connections that have proven unreliable in the past. This quality control system extends to the network's partners as well. Trees and other plants that consistently honor their commitments to the network receive higher service levels and more reliable connections. Those that attempt to take more than they give may find themselves gradually isolated, their service quality reduced until they either improve their contributions or leave the network entirely. But the network's approach to quality control is nuanced rather than punitive. Plants facing genuine hardships, perhaps struggling with disease or environmental stress, often receive extra support rather than reduced service. The network appears to distinguish between poor performance due to lack of effort and poor performance due to circumstances beyond the plant's control, responding with appropriate compassion or accountability. This ethical dimension of network operations reveals a sophisticated understanding of community dynamics. The system recognizes that maintaining community health requires both standards and flexibility, both accountability and forgiveness. Members who are genuinely trying to contribute receive support even when their contributions are limited, while those who exploit the system's generosity face consequences that encourage better behavior. The network's conflict resolution mechanisms are equally sophisticated. When disputes arise between member organisms, perhaps over resource allocation or territorial boundaries, the network has established procedures for mediation and arbitration. Neutral parties, often fungi with no direct stake in the dispute, facilitate negotiations that seek mutually beneficial solutions. These mediation processes reveal a deep understanding of game theory and negotiation strategy. The network recognizes that win-lose solutions often lead to ongoing conflicts that damage community cohesion. Instead, mediators work to identify win-win outcomes that address the underlying needs of all parties, while reinforcing the cooperative principles that keep the network functioning. The patience required for effective mediation in the fungal world is extraordinary. Some disputes may take months or even years to resolve, with multiple rounds of negotiation punctuated by cooling-off periods. But the network's commitment to finding peaceful solutions reflects its understanding that the long-term stability of the community depends on maintaining trust and cooperation among all members. Educational aspects of network membership extend far beyond basic resource-sharing techniques. Young trees connecting to established networks receive comprehensive training in forest citizenship, learning not just how to take from the community, but how to contribute to its welfare. They learn to recognize and respond appropriately to different types of chemical signals, to participate in collective decision-making processes, and to support other community members during times of need. This educational process is remarkably comprehensive, covering everything from basic survival skills to advanced community leadership techniques. Young trees learn how to optimize their photosynthesis for maximum sugar production, how to develop root systems that integrate effectively with fungal partners, and how to time their reproductive cycles to coordinate with community-wide efforts. They also receive instruction in what might be called forest etiquette, the social protocols that keep the community functioning smoothly. They learn when it's appropriate to request additional resources, how to offer assistance to struggling neighbors, and how to participate in the collective decisions that guide network operations. Advanced members of the network may receive specialized training in particular areas of expertise. Some trees develop skills in early threat detection, becoming the community's sentinel system. Others specialize in resource storage and distribution, managing the network's reserves during times of abundance and scarcity. Still, others focus on integration and mentorship, helping new members find their place in the community. The network's approach to innovation and research reveals another dimension of its sophistication. Rather than simply maintaining existing practices, the community actively experiments with new techniques, new partnerships, and new approaches to common challenges. These experiments are carefully managed to minimize risk to the overall community, while maximizing opportunities for beneficial discoveries. Innovation often emerges from the network's youngest members, who bring fresh perspectives and fewer preconceptions about how things should be done. The network encourages this innovative thinking, while providing the guidance and support necessary to prevent costly mistakes. It's a balance between creativity and stability that allows the community to evolve while maintaining its essential character. The experimental process typically begins with small-scale trials involving volunteer participants. If an innovation shows promise, it may be expanded to larger groups of willing participants. Only after extensive testing and refinement are new practices adopted network-wide. This cautious approach to change ensures that innovations truly benefit the community rather than simply representing interesting novelties. The network's relationship with time reveals yet another layer of its remarkable nature. While individual fungi and trees experience time in their own life cycles, the network itself operates on multiple temporal scales simultaneously. It responds to immediate needs within minutes, adjusts to daily cycles of light and darkness, adapts to seasonal changes over months, and maintains long-term strategies that span decades or centuries. This multi-temporal awareness allows the network to balance short-term responsiveness with long-term stability in ways that human institutions often struggle to achieve. Emergency responses can be implemented immediately without compromising long-term strategic goals. Seasonal adjustments can be made without losing sight of multi-year objectives. Investment decisions can consider both immediate needs and century-long trends. The network's memory systems support this temporal sophistication by maintaining detailed records of past events, successful strategies, and lessons learned from both successes and failures. This institutional memory allows each generation to build upon the accumulated wisdom of its predecessors, rather than starting from scratch with each new challenge. Recent discoveries have revealed that these memory systems may be far more sophisticated than previously imagined. The networks appear to maintain not just simple records of what happened, but complex analyses of why certain strategies succeeded or failed under particular circumstances. This analytical capability allows them to apply past lessons more effectively to new situations. The network's predictive abilities seem to improve with age and experience. Older, more established networks show greater accuracy in anticipating environmental changes and preparing appropriate responses. They've learned to recognize subtle patterns that indicate developing problems, allowing them to take preventive action rather than simply reacting to crises after they occur. This predictive capability extends to long-term planning as well. Networks in stable environments often begin preparing for major challenges decades before they're expected to occur. They may start shifting their species composition in anticipation of climate changes, or begin building connections to distant areas that may become important refuge sites during future disturbances. The network's approach to resource management reveals principles that economists and policymakers might find instructive. Rather than operating on simple market mechanisms, where resources flow to the highest bidder, these systems employ complex allocation strategies that consider multiple factors including need, contribution, potential, and community benefit. During times of abundance, the networks tend to operate on generous principles, sharing resources widely and investing heavily in community infrastructure and member development. During scarce times, they become more conservative, focusing resources on maintaining critical functions and supporting the most essential community members. But even during difficult periods, the networks maintain their commitment to supporting struggling members who are making genuine efforts to contribute. The community recognizes that abandoning members during their times of greatest need would undermine the trust and cooperation that make the entire system possible. The network's financial systems, if we can call them that, operate on principles of long-term sustainability rather than short-term profit maximization. Investments are evaluated based on their potential to strengthen the community over decades or centuries, not just their immediate returns. This patient approach to resource allocation allows the networks to build the robust infrastructure needed to survive environmental challenges and support future growth. Quality of life considerations also play important roles in network decision-making. The systems don't simply optimize for maximum resource extraction or fastest growth. Instead, They seek to create conditions that support the well-being and development of all community members. Trees in network-connected forests show better health, greater resilience to stress, and longer lifespans than their isolated counterparts. The networks also invest considerable resources in what might be called cultural activities, behaviors that don't directly contribute to survival, but that enrich the community experience. Some fungi appear to engage in purely aesthetic activities, creating beautiful and intricate structures that serve no obvious functional purpose. These activities suggest that even these ancient networks recognize the value of beauty and creativity in community life. The social dimensions of network membership reveal yet another layer of complexity. The systems maintain detailed information about the relationships between different members, facilitating connections between compatible partners and helping to resolve conflicts between less compatible ones. Some fungi appear to specialize in social mediation, helping to maintain harmony within the community. The networks also recognize and celebrate achievement within their communities. Trees that make exceptional contributions to community welfare may receive recognition in the form of enhanced resource allocations or privileged access to new opportunities. These recognition systems help motivate continued excellence, while acknowledging the efforts of community members who go above and beyond basic expectations. Mentorship relationships within the networks often develop into long-term partnerships that persist for decades. Experienced fungi may maintain special relationships with particular trees throughout their life cycles, providing guidance and support during challenging periods and celebrating successes during good times. These relationships add a personal dimension to what might otherwise be purely transactional exchanges. The network's approach to diversity and inclusion reveals sophisticated understanding of the benefits that come from varied perspectives and capabilities. Rather than seeking homogeneous communities of similar organisms, the networks actively cultivate diversity, recognizing that different species bring different strengths and capabilities to the collective effort. This commitment to diversity extends to providing accommodation and support for community members with special needs. Trees growing in challenging locations receive extra resources and assistance. Plants with unusual characteristics or requirements are integrated into the community rather than excluded. The networks seem to understand that diversity strengthens the entire system by providing resilience and adaptability. The integration of new species into existing networks involves complex negotiation processes that can take years to complete. The networks must evaluate how new members will fit into existing social and economic structures, what accommodations might be needed to support their participation, and how their unique capabilities can best be utilized for community benefit. These integration processes reveal the network's commitment to growth and evolution. Rather than simply maintaining static communities, the systems actively seek opportunities to expand their capabilities and improve their services through the addition of new members with complementary skills and perspectives. The network's response to external threats reveals their sophisticated understanding of collective security principles. When dangers arise that threaten the entire community, the networks can rapidly mobilize coordinated responses that leverage the unique capabilities of different community members. Some species serve as early warning systems, others provide defensive capabilities, and still others specialize in damage control and recovery. These security responses demonstrate the network's ability to balance individual and collective interests. While community members may be asked to make sacrifices for the common good during crisis periods, the networks ensure that these burdens are shared fairly and that those who contribute most to collective security receive appropriate recognition and support. The networks also maintain contingency plans for various types of emergencies, with predetermined response protocols that can be activated quickly when needed. These plans are regularly updated based on new threats and changing community capabilities, ensuring that the networks remain prepared for whatever challenges they might face. Recovery and rebuilding efforts following major disturbances reveal the network's remarkable resilience and adaptability. Rather than simply trying to restore pre-disturbance conditions, the networks often use recovery periods as opportunities to improve their infrastructure and strengthen their communities. New connections may be built to replace damaged ones, with upgrades that provide better service and greater reliability. The network's approach to recovery also demonstrates their commitment to learning from experience. Post-disturbance analyses identify what worked well during the crisis, what could have been done better, and how the community can be better prepared for similar challenges in the future. These lessons are incorporated into the network's institutional memory, improving their response capabilities for future emergencies. As we contemplate these remarkable systems operating continuously beneath every forest floor, we begin to appreciate that we're observing something far more sophisticated than simple biological partnerships. These networks represent one of evolution's most successful experiments in cooperation, communication, and community organization. They've developed solutions to challenges that human societies are still struggling to address: sustainable resource management, effective conflict resolution, inclusive community development, and resilient infrastructure design. The quiet persistence of these networks through countless environmental changes and challenges offers both inspiration and instruction for our own efforts to build sustainable communities. They show us that cooperation and mutual aid aren't just nice ideals, but practical strategies that can sustain complex systems through the most difficult circumstances imaginable. Perhaps most remarkably, they accomplish all of this without the hierarchical control structures that humans often assume are necessary for complex organization. There are no kings or presidents in the fungal world, no central authorities issuing orders or making decisions for others. Instead, these networks demonstrate that sophisticated collective behavior can emerge from countless individual interactions, each guided by simple principles of mutual benefit and community welfare. As you continue to settle into the peaceful quiet of your evening, perhaps you'll find yourself thinking about the hidden networks that surround us all, not just the fungal highways beneath every tree, but all the invisible connections that link living things in webs of mutual dependence and support. The knowledge that such ancient and successful forms of cooperation exist right beneath our feet offers a quiet comfort, a reminder that caring and connection aren't human inventions but fundamental principles that have guided life on Earth for hundreds of millions of years. In forests around the world, from the tropical rainforests of the Amazon to the boreal forests of Canada, from the ancient woodlands of Europe to the diverse forests of Asia and Australia, these networks continue their patient work, connecting, communicating, sharing, and caring for the living world in ways both profound and beautiful. They remind us that beneath the surface of our often chaotic world, there are deeper currents of cooperation and mutual aid that have sustained life through every challenge our planet has faced. And in that knowledge, perhaps we can find both wonder and comfort as we drift towards sleep, knowing that we are part of a world where caring and connection are not just human ideals, but fundamental principles written into the very foundations of life itself. The next time you walk among trees, you'll know that you're walking above one of Earth's most ancient and successful civilizations, a quiet society that has been practicing the arts of cooperation and community care for far longer than our species has existed. The quiet hum of these networks reaches its most profound expression in their relationship with death and renewal. When a great tree finally falls after centuries of life, its passing doesn't mark an ending, but a transformation. The fungal partners that sustained it through decades of growth don't simply abandon their fallen host. Instead, they orchestrate one of nature's most elegant recycling programs, carefully dismantling the tree's massive structure and redistributing its accumulated wealth throughout the community. This process unfolds with remarkable precision and patience. Different fungal species specialize in breaking down different components of the fallen giant. Some focus on the tough lignin that gave the tree its structural strength. Others work on the cellulose that formed its bulk, while still others concentrate on extracting the minerals and nutrients locked within the wood. Each species contributes its unique biochemical tools to the collective effort, ensuring that nothing valuable is lost. The decomposition process can take decades, with the fallen tree serving as a slow-release reservoir of resources for the entire forest community. Young trees growing nearby receive steady supplies of nutrients as the fungi gradually break down their massive predecessor. In this way, each generation of forest giants helps nurture the next, creating an unbroken chain of generosity that spans centuries. But the network's relationship with mortality extends beyond simple resource recycling. They appear to maintain something resembling memorial systems, preserving information about fallen community members long after their physical remains have been fully processed. The chemical signatures of important trees may persist in the network's memory banks, creating a kind of ancestral knowledge that continues to influence community decisions. These memorial systems help explain how forests can maintain their character and identity even as individual trees come and go. The network remembers not just what resources were available from departed members, but how those trees contributed to community life, what partnerships they formed, and what lessons their experiences might offer to future generations. The process of succession planning in these networks reveals another dimension of their sophisticated organization. Long before a tree shows signs of serious decline, the network begins preparing for its eventual departure. Resources may be gradually shifted away from the aging giant toward younger trees with greater growth potential. New partnerships may be established to ensure that critical network functions can continue when the old tree is no longer able to perform them. This succession planning isn't callous abandonment of elderly community members. Rather, it reflects the network's understanding that smooth transitions benefit everyone, including the aging trees themselves. By gradually reducing their resource responsibilities, older trees can focus their remaining energy on functions they're uniquely qualified to perform, sharing their accumulated wisdom with younger community members, maintaining critical long-distance connections, and serving as stable anchor points for the network's infrastructure. The networks also demonstrate remarkable sensitivity to the emotional dimensions of loss and transition. When a beloved community member begins to fail, other trees often increase their support, offering companionship and comfort during the difficult period. Chemical communications during these times carry messages that seem designed not just to coordinate practical responses, but to provide something resembling emotional support. Scientists studying these communications have identified compounds that appear to serve no practical function other than acknowledgement and comfort. Trees surrounding a dying community member release chemical signatures that might best be described as expressions of gratitude, recognition, and farewell. It's as if the forest is saying goodbye, honoring the contributions of a departing friend. The regeneration phase that follows major losses reveals the network's remarkable capacity for renewal and growth. Areas where large trees have fallen become nurseries for new growth, with the fungal infrastructure already in place to support rapid establishment of the next generation. Seeds that might have struggled to germinate in dense forest conditions find themselves in perfect growing conditions, with abundant light, rich soil, and immediate access to network resources. But the networks don't simply replace what was lost with identical copies. Instead, they use regeneration periods as opportunities for innovation and adaptation. New species may be introduced to fill ecological roles that weren't previously represented in the community. Existing partnerships may be restructured to take advantage of new opportunities created by the changed environment. This adaptive approach to regeneration helps explain how forests can maintain their resilience in the face of changing environmental conditions. Rather than rigidly trying to restore previous conditions, the networks allow each disturbance to become a learning opportunity, an experiment in new ways of organizing the community for greater strength and stability. The network's understanding of genetics and heredity adds yet another layer to their sophisticated community management. They appear to recognize genetic relationships among plants and may preferentially support the offspring of particularly valuable community members. Parent trees often maintain special connections with their seedlings, providing extra resources and protection during the vulnerable early years. But the networks also recognize the importance of genetic diversity and actively work to prevent inbreeding and genetic stagnation. They facilitate connections between unrelated individuals, support the establishment of plants from distant populations, and may even encourage hybridization between closely related species when such crosses might produce beneficial traits. The role of these networks in plant evolution is only beginning to be understood, but early research suggests they may actively shape the evolutionary trajectory of their member species. By creating selection pressures that favor cooperation over competition, mutualism over aggression, and community benefit over individual advantage, the networks may be guiding the evolution of more cooperative and socially integrated plant communities. This evolutionary influence operates through multiple mechanisms. Plants that form better partnerships with fungi have access to more resources and better survival prospects. Those that contribute more generously to community welfare receive preferential treatment during times of stress. Over many generations, these selection pressures may favor the evolution of increasingly cooperative and community-minded plant populations. The network's influence on plant behavior extends to reproductive strategies as well. Many trees in network-connected forests coordinate their flowering and seed production, creating synchronized reproductive events that overwhelm seed predators and ensure successful regeneration. The networks help orchestrate these coordinated reproductive efforts, sharing information about environmental conditions and helping to time reproductive events for maximum success. Some of the most recent discoveries about these networks involve their role in climate adaptation and species migration. As environmental conditions change, the networks appear to actively facilitate the movement of plant species into newly suitable habitats, while helping existing communities adapt to changing conditions in their current locations. This facilitation process involves extending network connections into areas that may become suitable for forest expansion, essentially building the infrastructure needed for colonization before the colonizing species arrive. When climate refugees from other regions begin to establish themselves in new areas, they find fungal partners already waiting to help them integrate into the local community. The networks also help existing communities adapt to changing conditions by facilitating genetic exchange with populations that are already adapted to the new conditions. Seeds and pollen from distant populations may receive special support when they arrive in established communities, allowing beneficial adaptations to spread more rapidly through plant populations than would be possible through normal reproductive processes alone. The chemical complexity of these climate adaptation processes reveals the network's sophisticated understanding of environmental chemistry. They can detect subtle changes in atmospheric composition, soil chemistry, and plant metabolism that indicate developing environmental stress long before these changes become obvious to human observers. Early warning systems within the networks can alert entire forest communities to approaching droughts, temperature changes, or other environmental challenges, allowing trees to begin physiological preparations before the stress actually arrives. This advanced preparation can mean the difference between survival and death during severe environmental challenges. The network's response to human activities reveals both their remarkable adaptability and their vulnerability to certain types of disturbance. They can often adapt to moderate levels of human intervention, reorganizing their connections to work around roads, buildings, and other infrastructure. But intensive land use practices that disrupt soil structure or eliminate large areas of forest can fragment these networks in ways that take decades or even centuries to repair. Conservation efforts increasingly recognize the importance of maintaining fungal network connectivity when planning forest management activities. Practices that preserve soil structure and maintain forest corridors help protect these ancient partnerships, ensuring that the networks can continue their essential work of supporting forest health and resilience. The restoration potential of these networks offers hope for healing damaged ecosystems. When forest restoration projects work with existing fungal networks rather than against them, recovery can be dramatically accelerated. Native fungi already present in degraded soils can serve as the foundation for rebuilding forest communities, providing the infrastructure needed to support successful tree establishment. But restoration efforts also reveal how much we still don't understand about these complex systems. Attempts to artificially recreate fungal networks in severely degraded areas have met with mixed success, suggesting that there are aspects of network formation and function that remain mysterious to human science. The international dimension of these networks is only beginning to be appreciated. Some fungal species form partnerships with plants across multiple continents, creating truly global networks that may help coordinate environmental responses on a planetary scale. The implications of this global connectivity are profound, suggesting that forests around the world may be more interconnected than previously imagined. Climate change responses observed in forests on one continent may influence the behavior of forests on other continents through these global fungal connections. Information about successful adaptation strategies may spread through the network faster than the climate changes themselves, helping forests prepare for conditions they haven't yet experienced. The role of these networks in maintaining global atmospheric chemistry is also becoming clearer. The massive amounts of carbon they store in soil, their influence on plant photosynthesis rates, and their effects on soil respiration all contribute to the regulation of atmospheric carbon dioxide levels. Changes in network health and function could have significant impacts on global climate patterns. The medicinal dimensions of these networks continue to reveal new possibilities for human health and well-being. Many of the fungi that form forest partnerships also produce compounds with antibacterial, antiviral, and immune-supporting properties. The forest's underground pharmacy may contain solutions to medical challenges we haven't yet learned to recognize. But perhaps more intriguingly, some research suggests that exposure to healthy forest environments with their intact fungal networks may have direct benefits for human immune system function and mental health. The chemical communications that flow through these networks may influence human physiology in ways we're only beginning to understand. The therapeutic potential of spending time in network-rich forest environments is leading to new approaches in healthcare and wellness. Forest bathing practices, already popular in some cultures, may derive their benefits not just from the peaceful environment, but from biochemical interactions with the forest's chemical communications. The educational implications of these discoveries are equally profound. Understanding how these networks operate challenges many assumptions about intelligence, communication, and social organization that underlie human educational systems. The network's approach to knowledge sharing, mentorship, and community learning may offer insights for developing more effective and inclusive educational practices. The patience and persistence required for network-based learning stands in sharp contrast to the speed and efficiency often prioritized in human education. The networks understand that deep learning takes time, that mastery requires practice, and that the most valuable knowledge is often that which is shared freely rather than hoarded competitively. The collaborative approach to problem-solving demonstrated by these networks offers alternatives to the competitive models that often dominate human institutions. Instead of individuals competing for limited resources, the networks show how cooperation can create abundance, how sharing can multiply rather than diminish wealth, and how community support can help everyone achieve their full potential. As we contemplate the full scope of these remarkable systems, we begin to understand that we're looking at more than just biological phenomena. These networks represent one of evolution's most sophisticated experiments in social organization, demonstrating principles of cooperation, communication, and community care that have sustained complex societies for hundreds of millions of years. The quiet persistence of these networks through countless environmental changes and challenges offers both hope and instruction for our own efforts to build sustainable communities. They remind us that cooperation and mutual aid aren't just idealistic goals, but practical strategies that can sustain complex systems through the most difficult circumstances. The ancient wisdom embedded in these networks, their understanding of patience, cooperation, diversity, and long-term thinking, offers valuable guidance for addressing the challenges facing human communities. In a world often characterized by competition, short-term thinking, and individual achievement, these networks demonstrate the enduring power of collaboration, patience, and community care. As you settle into the final moments of our journey together, perhaps you'll find yourself thinking about the profound interconnectedness that surrounds us all. Beneath every forest floor, these networks continue their quiet work of connection and care, reminding us that we are part of a world where cooperation is not just possible, but fundamental to life itself. The next time you walk among trees, breathe forest air, or simply rest in the shade of an ancient oak, remember that you are in the presence of one of Earth's most successful civilizations. These quiet networks, invisible to casual observation but essential to forest life, have been practicing the arts of community care and mutual support since long before our species existed. In their patient example, we find both wonder and wisdom. They show us that meaningful connection doesn't require constant communication, that effective cooperation can emerge without central control, and that the most resilient communities are those built on principles of mutual support and shared benefit. They remind us that caring and connection are not human inventions, but fundamental principles woven into the very fabric of life on Earth. And so, as you drift towards sleep tonight, wherever in the world you may be, take comfort in knowing that beneath the surface of our often chaotic world, these ancient networks of cooperation continue their essential work. In the gentle darkness beneath every forest, they connect and communicate, share and care, maintaining the quiet foundation upon which so much of life depends. Their story is ultimately our story too, a reminder that we are all connected in ways both visible and invisible, part of a grand web of relationships that spans not just our human communities but the entire living world. In that connection, in that belonging, in that quiet knowledge of our place within something far larger than ourselves, perhaps we can find the peace and comfort that carries us gently into sleep, knowing we are never truly alone. Rest well, knowing that the networks continue their patient work, and that tomorrow, when you wake, the world will still be held together by countless invisible threads of care, connection, and quiet cooperation that have sustained life through every challenge our planet has ever faced. Sweet dreams, fellow traveler, in this remarkable, interconnected world.